When Mr. Zenon sees Sid approaching him while disguised as the Eminence in the shadow, he immediately recognizes Sid as the person who has been causing trouble in the city and tracking down members of the Diabolos cult. At that precise instant, Sid reveals his true identity to be Shadow and says that he is the one who lurks in the darkness in order to hunt other shadows. The moment she hears his name, Princess Alexia's expression abruptly shifts to one of surprise. During this time, Mr. Zenon does not appear to respond in any way to his introduction. Sid, on the other hand, is mocked because he was only accountable for eliminating the dangling threads of the cult, not the actual members of the cult themselves. In response, Sid assuages his fears by assuring him that the outcome of their hunt will remain the same, no matter how many times they go on it. After that, Zenon issues a challenge to him, claiming that a core member of the cult is currently standing in front of him. Apparently, this member is Zenon. He threatens Sid with the ultimate goal of taking his life in the name of the Knights of Rounds. On the other hand, it appears as though Zenon has launched a particularly vicious assault on him as he charges at him. Surprisingly, he did not strike Sid, who had already moved out of the way and was now standing in front of Princess Alexia. Sid, as a way of subtly mocking him, asks to meet the alleged central member of the cult that he had been talking about, which causes him to be taken aback to the point of complete surprise. On the other hand, the Knights are having a difficult time protecting the citizens from the enormous and lethal monster that managed to escape from the facility. They fire a number of rounds at the monster, but it seems as though their efforts will be in vain because the monster slaps them out of the way, causing them to soar into the air as a result. They launch another attack at the beasts, this time executing a triple slash that cuts the monster's back in 3 places. On the other hand, in a turn of events that was completely unexpected, the monster is able to heal itself. As soon as the soldiers realize that the creature they are up against is not your typical monster, they are given the orders to assemble all of the units that are nearby and to fight it with everything they will have. In addition, now that the citizens have been evacuated, the Knights have been given the order to cause damage to the structures if doing so ends up being necessary in their bid to defeat the monster. However, Princess Iris has recently arrived at the location, and upon her arrival, she wastes no time in beginning to slash the monster in preparation for the inevitable conclusion of the battle. Despite this, the monster is able to pull itself together and stand back up on its own 2 feet. As soon as the Knights see this, they are astounded by the fact that the monster is still able to continue its assault in spite of Princess Iris having cut it. As a result of seeing this, Princess Iris becomes enraged and cuts off one of its arms with her sword. It did not appear that this was as fruitful as she had hoped it would be, given that the monster almost immediately grew another arm after this. Princess Iris is not frightened or alarmed by the mere sight of this because it does not persuade her that she is in any kind of danger. Instead, she has grown more resolute and is now of the opinion that in order to get rid of him for good, she will need to dismember him and scatter his pieces around. Because she is going to continue to cause the monster more suffering if she keeps doing this, Alpha arrives just in time and is able to stop her. Upon first seeing the woman, Princess Iris is curious about who she is and asks. The woman responds quickly by saying that her name is Alpha. Then she carries out a powerful attack that will cause the monster to transform into a human-like creature. Surprisingly, even as she gets closer to the monster, she demonstrates compassion for it. While Alpha is getting ready to leave, Princess Iris demands that she come back. However, once Alpha had completed the task she had come to do, she instructs the princess to behave like an appropriate audience member and to enjoy the performance that Alpha had just finished giving. She divulges to the princess that they are Shadow Garden and advises the princess to maintain her distance from them. Exactly at that moment, she disappears, and the princess is left to speculate on the nature of the Shadow Garden. An explosion takes place right as she is trying to figure it out, jolting her back to the here and now and forcing her to confront the truth. This leads her to think about her sister, who is not present once more, which in turn causes her to wonder where her sister is. While this is going on, Sid and Zenon are still fighting in front of Princess Alexia, despite the fact that they are surrounded by the wreckage from the earlier conflict. During the battle, Zenon begins to understand why the other members of the cult had underestimated Sid, which led to Sid's victory over them. Zenon casts a spell that he calls the Might of a Future Knight of Rounds, in an effort to demonstrate just how powerful he actually is. He refers to this spell as the power of a future Knight of Rounds. However, his attempts to injure Sid continue to be fruitless, because Sid is easily able to shrug off his attacks. This makes it difficult for him to succeed in his goal. After witnessing this, Princess Alexia has a newfound admiration for the formidable power that Sid possesses, despite the fact that she's not yet aware that he is in fact Sid, the person that she has taken as her fake boyfriend. Sid, on the other hand, makes fun of Zenon by pointing out that his apparently tremendous ability as a future Knight of Rounds is not nearly as advanced as he is a fighter. This causes him to become enraged, and he rushes towards Sid, who, despite his best efforts, continues to avoid his attacks. After witnessing this, Princess Alexia is astounded by his extraordinary abilities. However, she is surprised to discover that his fencing is not significantly better than average. She makes a comparison between the sword style that was utilized on her own, expanding on how much she had strived to be like her sister, but had always been derided by people for not coming up to her sister's standards. Exactly at that instant, she has the sudden realization that Sid is the only person who has ever possessed a fencing style that is comparable to hers. Sid is currently continuing his battle against Zenon, who had previously reached his breaking point in the conflict. Zenon is curious about finding out the truth about Sid's identity, and he issues a challenge to him to come clean about it because he notices that Sid possesses a great deal of power. At this point, Sid reaffirms to him that they are the Shadow Garden, a group whose primary objective is to track down and apprehend people who live and roam within the shadows. Zenon decides to take some drugs that will give him an increased capacity for strength as a last-ditch effort. He goes through a change as a direct result of taking the pills, which causes him to become a more ferocious warrior, who refers to himself as the Third Awakened. He is of the opinion that only the people who should be permitted to participate in the rounds are those who are able to exercise control over the power that he possesses, and not let it slip from their grasp. After that, he reveals a force that he calls the power of the Almighty and causes it to be released. After the enormous effort that Zenon put forth, Sid is offended that Zenon would think of himself as God because of all that he has accomplished. He views this as an insult to the Almighty and an act of blasphemy against him. In a fit of rage, he charges at Zenon and immediately begins to deliver vicious blows to him. Sid is adamant that there is no way to achieve all-powerfulness through the utilization of a power that was not one's own to begin with. Before he unleashes his final move, he tells Zenon the story about how he had tried to protect himself from being hit by a nuclear weapon, but instead he ended up turning himself into a nuclear weapon. Zenon is shocked to hear this. After that, Zenon watches as Sid performs his finishing move. He calls this power his almighty power, and it is the power that transforms him into an atomic being. It also enables him to vaporize Zenon, which is what he means when he says it. Princess Iris is present when the explosion occurs, and she observes the site where it took place after it has already occurred. In the hopes of finding her sister, she doesn't waste any time and dashes off in that direction immediately. Princess Alexia, on the other hand, showed no signs of being shaken or affected in any way by the explosion. As soon as Princess Iris finally gets a look at her sister, she is overcome with excitement and rushes to embrace her in joy. The following day, Princess Alexia resumes her regular routine by going back to school as she does every day. She is with Sid, who has assumed his former identity as a student. She goes on to describe her struggles to Sid, who doesn't seem particularly interested in hearing about them. At that precise moment, she shows her appreciation to him for the compliment he had previously paid to her fencing technique by expressing her gratitude. She assuages his fears by assuring him that she has reconciled her feelings regarding her fencing technique and that she now appreciates it. Then Princess Alexia begs Sid to continue pretending to be in a relationship with her for a short while longer before he leaves. Sid declines her offer, and this causes her to smile weirdly. The members of the Shadow Garden who report to Lord Shadow, the leader of the organization, compliment him on the many achievements he has achieved. They are operating under the assumption that one day all of their opponents will be vanquished. They are concerned about a number of things, one of which is the recent impersonation of their organization by individuals who are unknown to them. Despite this, they are certain that those responsible for these scams will be held accountable in the end. Meanwhile, Princess Iris has recently gained knowledge about the cult of Diabolos and the Shadow Garden, and as a result, she has reason to believe that the something sinister is taking place. She's under the impression that there is some sort of link between them. As a consequence of this, she comes to the conclusion that a new research team should be established, and that Glenn and Marco should take the helm. On the other hand, back in the school, there's a girl who is wandering around with a stack of books in her hands, and Sid unintentionally blocks her path, which results in the unfortunate event of her dropping the books that she was carrying. Despite this, he extends his hand to her in an attempt to help her stand, but she does not respond and appears to be rendered speechless by his presence. Did you enjoy this recap? If you did, kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel, so we can bring you the recap of the next episode. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.